I am absolutely loving my One Piece journey, and I'm super grateful to everyone who viewed my first video, and I was surprised to see just how welcoming the One Piece community was, but I realized it had been a while since my last video, so I am back with another video. Today I'm covering the Baratier arc. To share my perspective coming into this arc, I would say One Piece definitely piqued my curiosity over the first 3 arcs of the East Blue, but I wasn't entirely sold until this arc, and I won't forget the moment I realized I was sold on One Piece, because on the weekend I sat down to watch 1 episode of the Baratier arc, but that was a big mistake because the next thing I knew I was already at Arlong Park wondering what just happened, and I realized I had binged through this whole arc in a day, and I was completely invested in the series. We begin the arc with an episode devoted to Zoro's backstory, which was great to finally see. The episode begins with the kid Zoro. He marches right up to a dojo, challenges the master to a fight, and I'm watching this thinking, this kid was crazy. But I guess that's perfect for Luffy's crew because everyone's kind of crazy. However, instead of fighting the master, he has to fight the master's daughter, who's incredibly skilled. Her name is Kuina. The fight begins and instantly Zoro is smacked on the head. Honestly, it was kind of funny, but he refuses to give up, which is something I love about Zoro and some of these other One Piece characters, is just their perseverance. He runs right back in, and predictably he's smacked on the head yet again. Even from what I know about Zoro, he's not the brightest character, but I do love his spirit. So at this moment he agrees to join the dojo. He wants to surpass Kuina and eventually become the world's greatest swordsman, and Kuina kind of becomes his rival at this point. So what does Zoro do? He trains like crazy, but then he loses a lot, and he trains some more and he keeps losing. However, I love that this doesn't discourage him. It only encourages him to keep trying harder and harder. And I have to say that might be one of the things I love about One Piece the most, is how much it motivates me in my life, because I see these characters pouring their hearts and souls into attaining whatever they want, and it's hard not to get motivated by watching that. Eventually Zoro finds Kuina one night. She's been crying because she overheard her father say she can never inherit the dojo because she's a woman. But this time Zoro challenges her with real swords. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is the time he's going to surpass Kuina and beat her in a fight. But I was definitely wrong. He loses very easily. However, then we see this moment with Kuina. She's breaking down. She's telling Zoro, what do you have to be upset about? I can never become the world's greatest swordsman because I'm a woman. And Zoro looks at her and he basically tells her, don't let anything ever stop you from your dreams. And there's this beautiful moment where they make a pact that one of them will become the world's greatest swordsman. So here I am thinking, okay, maybe Kuina is going to become a major rival. She might join a rival pirate crew, something like that. But I was way off, because barely even a minute after this, Zoro's told Kuina is dead. And I just sat there totally stunned. I really thought I had misheard. There's no way she died, right? I was definitely in denial for a moment because it was so sudden, it was off screen, the reality hadn't set in. I did think for a moment maybe she faked her death, but then I realized no, it really was necessary for Zoro's development. He probably would have never reached the heights he has without a loss like this, because here's a character who hasn't just been carrying his dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman, he's also been carrying Kuina's dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman. So if he fails, it kind of feels like both of them fail, and maybe in his mind her death is more in vain. But instantly I connected much more with Zoro's character. I was more understanding of why he is the way he is. And in another beautiful moment you have Zoro. He's begging his master for Kuina's sword. He's breaking down in tears, and he's given the sword as a way of almost carrying Kuina's spirit with him. Just a very touching and beautiful backstory. We go back to the present day where you have Luffy and Usopp, and they're using cannonballs as target practice, only to accidentally hit a rock, which happened to have 2 bounty hunters on it. Now the bounty hunters are named Johnny and Yosuku, and they attack the ship, only to realize that they're actually friends of Zoro's, so they stop. However, Yosuku is sick with scurvy, but no one knows what scurvy is on the boat except Nami, which made me wonder, did Luffy prepare at all to become king of the pirates? But this makes them realize they need a chef so that everyone eats properly, and they head to the Baratier. However, on the way they encounter a Marine, Iron Fist Full Body. He fires a cannonball at them, and Luffy tries to stop it, but because it's Luffy, nothing can ever be easy, and it goes right into the Baratier. This is obviously going to be a huge problem. So the chefs drag Luffy in front of the head chef, and in kind of a funny moment, at least I found it funny, Luffy looks at the head chef, whose name is Zeph, and Zeph is missing one of his legs, and he just starts freaking out because he thought he shot a guy's leg off. I don't know, I found that kind of funny, but I also find a lot of stuff Luffy does pretty funny. So Luffy has to make payment for the roof he damaged, but he doesn't have any money, so he agrees to work for a whole year for this guy. And I'm hearing this deal like, man, Luffy cannot negotiate to save his life. Luffy was trying to negotiate 1 week of work. This guy was like, no, a year, and they settled on a year. But anyway, next we meet Sanji for the first time, and my initial impressions of Sanji were he seems like a very cool, calm, and collected character. But even from his first interaction, you can tell he definitely has a thing for the ladies. Of course, I didn't realize just how much he loves women quite yet. However, he has a disagreement with the Marine full body. And Sanji shows he can fight, he beats this guy up very easily. Meanwhile, Luffy is getting beat up by the head chef, and I realize this place is crazy, and even Luffy says, man, this place is crazy, so you know it's bad. But while all this chaos is going on, one of the Marine's prisoners, a pirate named Geen, who's part of the Don Krieg pirates, escapes. However, he can't pay, so one of the crazy chefs beats him up, throws him out, and in a moment I like that shows Sanji's kind side, he gives this guy free food, because his policy is it doesn't matter who you are, his duty is to feed people. And Luffy is watching all this and he decides Sanji is going to be my chef, and you know, once Luffy makes up his mind, that's the end of it. So he asks Sanji to join the crew. Sanji refuses, but Luffy refuses to accept his refusal. That's one of the things I love about Luffy's character is when he makes up his mind to do something, he's going to get it done. But then Geen leaves, he's incredibly grateful. So Luffy begins his work at the Baratier, but he honestly does way more harm than good. He's breaking every single dish he washes. Honestly, I have way more faith in him to become king of the pirates than to actually wash dishes properly. But his crew is eating at the Baratier and Sanji just totally fawns over Nami. And it's at this moment I realized I knew he liked women, but he might actually like women too much for his own good. And in hindsight, I wondered if Nami really asked him to join the crew. If he would have, I think he probably would have, because what's the chance he refuses Nami? A bit of time goes by and Geen returns with the mighty Don Krieg pirates. However, Don Krieg is barely clinging to life, and at this point I'm wondering what's going on, what happened to these guys? Everyone in the restaurant wants to turn him in because he's this bad guy. Sanji, however, has to feed a hungry person, so he gives him food, and I'm watching this hoping, okay, maybe this guy will do the right thing even though he's a bad guy. That was a stupid thing to think, because once Don Krieg gets his strength, he instantly hits Sanji. He informs them he's taking the Baratier, and he tells the chefs to feed all of his men. They don't want to do it, but Sanji's like, I have to cook for them. The chefs stop him. They try and attack Don Krieg, only for Don Krieg to reveal this impenetrable armor. So in this moment I realized they're going to need Luffy to step in. The head chef returns with a bag full of meals. He's like, give this to your men. But then surprisingly, Don Krieg reveals Zeph is actually a famous pirate from back in the day, Redfoot Zeph, a man who sailed the Grand Line. Which honestly, the moment I heard that, I thought, you know what, that makes sense. This guy is kind of crazy. He does seem like the pirate type. But then we learned something crazier, which is the fact that Don Krieg, he went to the Grand Line with over 50 ships, and in under a week his whole fleet was wiped out. And I'm hearing this like, man, the Grand Line sounds absolutely crazy. But he leaves, and what's even crazier is Geen reveals not only was the whole fleet wiped out, but it was by one man. And I remember hearing this like, did this guy just say one guy? But we see it and we learn it was Hawkeye Mihawk. And Zoro hears this name and he's like, that's the guy I left home for. He's the one I have to beat to become the world's greatest swordsman. Which was nice for me as a viewer because then it declared, okay, Mihawk is the strongest swordsman. That's the guy Zoro will eventually have to beat. It gives a pretty definable goal. But I'm hearing all this and I'm like, are you sure you want to conquer the Grand Line, Luffy? This sounds a whole lot harder than I was initially assuming. If there are people like Mihawk who can wipe out fleets of 50 ships, but if that's not bad enough, everyone's like, wait, what did you do? How did you provoke him? And in kind of a funny moment, Geen is so confused, like, we didn't do anything. And I'm hearing this thinking, the Grand Line just sounds like a crazy place. You don't even have to provoke people and you're in danger. However, Luffy is insane, so he hears this, and it actually makes him more excited. In the meantime, the Don Krieg pirates, they're all fed up, they start to attack, and suddenly their ship is cut in half. And in all the chaos, Johnny and Yosuke, they turn up in the ocean, they say Nami stole the ship. And we get to see a flashback where she's troubled by this Arlong poster. Of course, it all makes a lot more sense in the next arc, but when I was watching this for the first time, I was genuinely confused when she stole the ship. But I absolutely love this next moment with Luffy. He tells Zoro and Usopp, you gotta go after her. And Zoro, he's not really having this. He says, forget her. But Luffy gets really serious. And when he's serious, things are really serious. And he looks at Zoro and he tells him, I won't accept anyone else as my navigator, which I absolutely love. Because that's something I've learned, once you're part of the team, you're always part of the team to Luffy. He'll do anything for you. And Zoro is about to leave, but then he spots Mihawk and I realize, oh no, he's gonna have to fight him. But there was never a moment I thought Zoro was actually strong enough to beat Mihawk, because to the best of my knowledge, he hadn't been destroying fleets of ships in his spare time. But I really do love this scene between Zoro and Mihawk. But some of the Don Krieg pirates, they see Mihawk and they're so confused, and they're asking him, why did you do this to us? And Mihawk looks at them dead serious and says, I'm just killing some time. Wow. I mean, this guy did all of this stuff to them because he was bored. I found that both hilarious and deeply troubling. But then Zoro challenges Mihawk to a fight, and Mihawk's like, yeah, I've got some time, but he pulls out a dagger. And if that isn't one of the craziest power plays, I don't know what is. Like, if this guy is so confident he can beat you with a dagger, maybe don't fight him. But obviously I'm rooting for Zoro. However, I never really thought he had much of a chance, but at the same time, I never really thought he would die because of how integral he is to the story. But Zoro tries to fight him and he's losing. This guy even blocks 3 swords with a single dagger. And Zoro's stumbling around and I feel so bad for him. I know his motivations. But he refuses to give up, and this actually impresses Mihawk. So Mihawk agrees to give him a good death. And in a single slash, he breaks his swords. Zoro realizes he's finished, but he turns around. And I love this moment, because Zoro says, "Scars on the back are a swordsman's shame." And Mihawk smiles at this and then he slashes him, but it's not a fatal slash. I do wonder if Zoro didn't just say that last quote, if Mihawk would have actually killed him. I'm not really sure. But he sinks into the ocean. Luffy freaks out over this. He attacks Mihawk, but Mihawk assures him, "Don't worry, it's too soon for Zoro to die. I didn't kill him." And then we have this great moment, which is probably my favorite moment of the whole arc. You have Zoro, he's pulled onto a boat and he's crying. And initially I assumed he's upset, maybe he doesn't think he can attain his goal. But no, he's apologizing to Luffy because he genuinely feels he let Luffy down. And I just love the loyalty he shows to Luffy. And he swears to him, "I'm never gonna lose again until I become the world's greatest swordsman." And I swear I just broke when he called Luffy King of the Pirates. I was just so happy with that scene. I felt genuinely proud, like I was a member of the crew. I know that might sound silly, but it's hard not to feel attached to these characters, like you're along for the journey with them. But anyway, Mihawk is like, "I've had my fun, I'm leaving." You know, because he's got better things to do. But then Zoro and Usopp, they leave to search for Nami, and Luffy makes a deal with Zeph. If he beats the pirates, his debt is cleared, and the battle begins. And I find it kind of funny that Luffy seems pretty happy to be in another fight. But I was honestly surprised by how strong Sanji was, especially his kicks. I mean, he was just wiping out men left, right, and center. I do find it interesting that he uses his feet so much in fights, because I guess his hands are so important as a chef. And the fighting goes on for a bit, but in all the chaos, Gin holds Zeph hostage, and we finally get Sanji's backstory. And I love how it perfectly explains the dynamic between Zeph and Sanji and why they're so close. And we get to see a young Sanji who's very excited about finding the All Blue, a place with fish from all the oceans. But suddenly a younger Zeph, he attacks his ship, and I'm pretty impressed by the courage of a young Sanji. He's fighting against the pirates. He even says, "I'm not gonna die until I find the All Blue," which definitely impresses Zeph, because moments later when a wave pushes Sanji into the ocean, Zeph doesn't even hesitate to jump in after him. Which was honestly a pretty surprising moment for me, because who would have thought that this heartless pirate would risk his life trying to save a kid he doesn't even know? Of course, while trying to save Sanji, he gets stuck and he has to cut off his leg. The two end up on a deserted island, and at this moment I'm still wondering, how do these two get so close? And Zeph divided up the food. It looks like he took a lot more, and they go and sit on separate sides of the island. And we learn after many days pass, Sanji is starving. He goes back, he sees Zeph's bag, and he goes and cuts it open, and I just love this moment where he realizes it's only gold. Zeph actually gave him all of the food, and he looks at Zeph realizing he gave him all of the food, and Sanji sees Zeph actually lost his foot, saving him. And in this moment, it makes perfect sense why these two are so close. Zeph sacrificed all of this for Sanji, and on the other hand, Sanji realizes just how much Zeph has sacrificed so he can live. And while Sanji is forever grateful, to an extent, he does still feel like he owes Zeph. So he doesn't really feel like he can leave him in search of his own dream yet. And then I love when Zeph shares that he wants Sanji to find the All Blue. And if it's out there, it's on the Grand Line. And the moment I hear that, I think, yeah, it's perfect, you gotta join Luffy's crew. But obviously the two get saved, they start up the Baratier, and then we go back to the present day. Another great backstory. I love how it connected me with the character of Sanji, and also it explained the dynamic between him and Zeph. But Sanji is looking at Zeph being held hostage, and this is tearing him up. But Gin finally comes to the realization, I can't shoot him. And he eventually starts to fight Sanji. He overpowers Sanji, but before he kills him, he once again realizes, I just can't do it. But this infuriates Don Krieg. He turns on his own men, fires poison gas at them, only to reveal when the smoke clears that it was Gin who gave Luffy his own mask, even though it means getting poisoned. And Luffy looks around and he sees Don Krieg is mocking Gin. And once again, I really think it's an interesting moment where Luffy is taking all of this in. And even in my first One Piece video, I mentioned something that absolutely infuriates Luffy is disloyalty, especially when a captain turns on his own crew. So Luffy rushes at Don Krieg. Even though it means he gets shot up with all these spikes, it doesn't stop him. And Don Krieg even has a spiked coat. That doesn't stop Luffy. Luffy just punches right through it. And I love that everyone is watching from the sidelines, this kind of David versus Goliath thing. Nobody thought Luffy had a chance. And you even have moments like Zeph saying, you know, Don Krieg might have all of this stuff, but he'll never have that kid's heart. And I just love moments like that. Because when I see Luffy, I don't necessarily think, oh, he's some great warrior or something like that. But he definitely has the heart of a warrior. Don Krieg really has every advantage. Luffy can't swim and he's on a shipwreck, so he's really got to be careful. Meanwhile, Don Krieg has this incredible armor, he's incredibly strong as well, he's got all these weapons. It really just doesn't seem like a fair fight. But at the same time, Luffy is just not going to lose. And these two fight for a bit. Don Krieg has all these weapons, he's got this armor, and Luffy's strategy is just, I'm gonna wear you out because I'm never gonna give up. And he just keeps hitting him and hitting him and hitting him. And eventually he deals the winning punch, and the battle is over. But after Luffy wins, he falls into the ocean, and I found it interesting how Sanji is the one who saves him, kind of mirroring when Zeff saved Sanji way back in the day. But I absolutely love this moment with Nami at the end of one of these episodes, because at this point none of it really made sense. Why did she leave? But to my surprise, you see Nami and she's crying. She wonders if the guys would ever let her join again, and pleading that she just wants to be free. And it shocked me just how emotional and tearful Nami made me in this moment. I just wanted to know in that moment what was going on and how can Luffy and the crew make it right. Of course it's answered in the next arc, but just an incredible scene. Back at the Baratier, Sanji still refuses to join Luffy's crew. However, I really do love this scene between Sanji and Luffy where Sanji shares his dream of finding the Old Blue, and you have Zeff looking on, and he just realizes, I gotta get Sanji to go with Luffy, he'll be happy, so he hatches up this plan to get all the chefs to insult Sanji's cooking. It obviously makes Sanji upset, but then he overhears it was all this plan to get Sanji to go with Luffy, and I realize in this moment Sanji changed his mind. However, suddenly Yosuke returns, he informs Luffy Nami's headed for Arlong Park and they need to go. They're heading out and Sanji stops Luffy, and he finally agrees to join the crew. I love this scene, it makes Luffy so happy, it kinda made me happy as well. Which leads to the next scene where Luffy is gathering food for the trip, and Zeff comes up to Luffy and he asks, hey, do you want my logbook of my travels through the Grand Line? To which Luffy replies no, but it surprised me that this kind of made Zeff happy, because initially I thought it was because Luffy doesn't like to read, but the more I thought about it is just because Luffy wants to experience everything for himself on this crazy adventure. And as they leave the Baratier, Sanji has a tearful goodbye. It's a very heartwarming moment between the chefs and Sanji, but I'm happy the crew got its cook. The very last thing we see is Nami looking very determined in front of Arlong Park, which is a perfect way of leading right into the next arc. But honestly, I absolutely loved this arc. I suppose what I really loved about this arc is how it further connected me with characters like Zoro in particular, and even newer characters like Sanji and getting his backstory. Not to mention all the stuff going on with Nami where there was a lot of curiosity. What's going on there? Why is she so sad? Why does she feel she had to leave? All these questions going through my mind. It was nice to see Luffy overcome another foe, but also the further connections between Zoro and Luffy, and Zoro making this promise to Luffy and introducing characters like Mihawk and really building up the Grand Line. There was so much in this arc that I absolutely loved. And while I was definitely curious about One Piece after the first 3 arcs, this one caused way more curiosity and all these questions flooding through my mind. Now, while I will say this was the first major arc to really hook me into One Piece, the next 2 arcs are actually my 2 favorite in the East Blue Saga, so I can't wait to review them. If you want to see future reviews, please like and subscribe and share your comments, but please avoid spoilers, and thank you for watching.